You want to study how word choices affect meaning? Well, there's stylistics. You want to see how meanings are constructed based on the functions of the language in the text? Well, you have systemic functional linguistics. You want to see how psychology interplays with language development? You have psycholinguistics. The list is virtually endless. And because of this, you could see the possibility of having analyzed the same body of text, but with different frameworks and theories. Now, if you want to go even further, you can always go multi theoretical and combine related frameworks and theories in analyzing one body of text. Speaking of theories, I would like to attempt to smoothly, quote unquote, transition into one interesting theory that I want to share with you. And I'm not just sharing this just for the sake of wanting to share it. In fact, this theory is quite important in understanding the premise of this whole show. Let's talk about critical theory. Just like in the previous episode, we're not going to go full on historical in this, okay? So allow me to just briefly introduce the concept to you. What are its tenets and principles, and how they are seen in the context of the real world? So, critical theory is a Western Marxist thought that originated at the Institute for Social Research at the University of Frankfurt around the 1920s. Some of you may have been familiar with some of the words that I have used in that sentence. How about let's use those words as points of our discussion? Let's start off with that familiar name of the place, Frankfurt in Germany. You're probably familiar with this place, probably because you have read somewhere that critical theory was associated with what we call the Frankfurt School of Thought. In fact, they call it the Frankfurt School of Critical Theory. Just a short description for those who are unfamiliar. The Frankfurt School of Thought was established by figures like Max Horkheimer and Theodor Adorno, two prominent names in the development of critical theory. They have started this school of thought, or maybe we could call it a movement, and by extension, the theory itself, critical theory, as a way to analyze and critique social structures and power dynamics, and to expose some inequalities and ideologies that promote and perpetuate oppression. Whew, if that sounds heavy, well, that's because it is. The whole theory, the whole movement, the whole school of thought, they were all inspired by something heavy as well. Which brings me to the second familiar word in the previous description of critical theory, Marxist. You see, the whole critical theory and its associations with the Frankfurt School are inspired by the Marxist philosophy. In fact, the key figures and members of the Frankfurt School, they were all followers of Marx. Karl Marx. Well, who is Karl Marx? And what does he believe in? What are his philosophies? Again, I won't try to attempt and go full on historical in this. Let me just say that Marx was a prominent German philosopher who lived in the 1800s and whose works revolve around politics, economics, and revolutionary socialism. He was a firm believer of concepts like economic determinism and the descriptions of power dynamics in society. I guess one important concept that is very much associated with Marx, and I think I'm oversimplifying here, is that Marx believes that power in social structures is primarily held by the very few rich or the bourgeoisie. On the other hand, the struggling class, the proletariat, are continuously and systematically being oppressed by the powerful, and that there should be something to be done to eliminate this power imbalance. Just knowing what Marx believes in essentially helps us understand what critical theory is. Well, what exactly is critical theory? Let's just keep it simple. It's a framework for analyzing power dynamics in society by examining and critiquing social, political, and economic structures that create and propagate injustices. Its ultimate goal is not just to explain society, but to transform it and achieve emancipation for the oppressed, the marginalized groups by promoting social justice and challenging unfair systems. Did you catch that? Critical theory has an emancipatory agenda. It wants to free the oppressed. It's not just trying to describe or paint a picture of what society is. It wants to act, it wants to free the oppressed. That's why critical theory incorporates various other ideologies from heavy hitters such as feminist theory or critical race theory or post colonialism and, well, of course, Marxism. Well, what does critical theory have to do with this podcast? It seems weird that I have just suddenly shifted from explaining text analysis and linguistics to critical theory. One moment we were just nerding out on language and language use. The next thing you know, we're talking about power dynamics and oppression. What's the deal with that? Well, my answer is critical applied linguistics. And your guess is correct. It's a combination of applied linguistics and critical theory. You see, there is an intersection between these two disciplines. Language plays a big role in constructing, maintaining, and challenging power structures in society. And critical theory just so happens to be so concerned, in fact, too concerned, with these power structures in society. Critical applied linguistics examines how language use, education, regulation, how these things relate to power distribution, maintenance, and reproduction. In critical applied linguistics, language is not seen as a neutral system or a simple abstract concept or a tool for communication. In critical applied linguistics, language is seen as a vessel that carries and controls power. Also, just like critical theory and its emancipatory agenda, this field not only wants to understand how power operates through language, but it also wants to transform oppressive practices and, as a result, empower marginalized groups. I think the better way to see this is to look at the actual society where we live in. Quick question. How do you know If someone in your group, let's say a class or in your office, how do you know if someone is trying to project that they are the best student or the best employee? Well, some of you may answer that maybe they're trying to show off too much, or maybe that they're trying to be too close to the teacher or the boss. But for the spirit of this discussion, let's consider one aspect of that scenario. And I hope that some of you thought of this answer as well. Someone is trying to make themselves look superior or powerful simply by speaking in English. Or at least they try their best to use English in most of their conversations. Or how about this? Let's flip the question. How would you feel if, in one of your normal break times in your favorite cafe or restaurant or wherever it is that you buy your snacks or drinks, how would you feel if suddenly a stranger comes to you and asks something very trivial like where the bathroom is or something like that? But the question is asked to you in full English. I don't know about you, and this may depend on the context, but if it were me, I would just answer the question. And then I might feel a little bit awkward on my end. I would feel a little bit inferior. I would probably think, damn, he or she must be very rich, or he must be someone in position, or maybe she's someone very important, or anything along those lines. The point is, the mere usage of English in what seems to be a situation where the Filipino language would have been more contextually appropriate would somehow make me feel anxious, inferior, or awkward. I bet the same would be the case to most of you. I don't know. It depends. Interestingly enough, critical linguistics also gave birth to many other more specific methodologies and frameworks for analyzing language through critical theory. Two of those are very significant to this show. I guess you could say that those two will be the backbone of this here podcast. Those two approaches that I was talking about are critical discourse analysis and critical stylistics, which we will be talking about in the next episode. This episode is written, produced, recorded, researched, and edited by yours truly. You can catch this podcast through its YouTube channel, Press and Prejudice, and hopefully soon on Spotify. Just search for the title. You can also follow the show's socials. Like us on Facebook at Press and Prejudice, and follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Press and Prej. That's PRESSANDPREJ. You may send your concerns, comments, suggestions, and literally anything to our official Gmail, pressandprej.podcast@gmail.com. Friends, I hope this episode has given you a good glimpse of what this podcast is about to become. The next episode is going to be a little bit more specific and hopefully a little bit more exciting. Thank you for listening and for your attention. This has been Press and Prejudice. I'll see you in the next big scoop.